is a perfect late summer day to be taking a foliar sample for our vineyard. My name is Annie Claude and I'm an extension educator for fruit and vegetable production at the University of Minnesota. So today we're out here at the UMN Horticulture Research Center and we're going to be talking about and demonstrating foliar nutrient sampling. So when we're talking about orchards and vineyards, it's really important to not just take a soil sample to determine the nutrient status of your vines, but to also take a foliar sample. That helps us better figure out not only what nutrients are in the soil, but how well those nutrients are being taken up by the vines or the fruit trees. There can be a lot of nutrients in the soil, but sometimes maybe the pH is off, or those nutrients are being tied up and they're not as available to the plants as we would want. Sometimes there can be winter injury in the plant that's prohibiting nutrients from being taken up. So it's really important to take that foliar sample to figure out how healthy our vines are and what nutrients we need to recommend you apply in order to make your vines healthy and productive. So today we're going to be demonstrating how to take a sample on a vineyard and on an orchard. There's a difference here that's really important, which is when we're talking about a vineyard, we're taking a foliar sample either in about May after bud break or during the beginning of veraison. In an orchard, especially an apple orchard specifically, you're going to be taking that foliar sample at a different time. It's going to be mid-season between about mid-July to mid-August. So it's important to remember that distinction, but we're going to be taking both samples today just to demonstrate. There are a few important things to remember when we're taking a foliar sample in a vineyard. The first is that we're going to be taking petioles from the leaves. We're not going to be taking the leaf blade itself. You want to take 50 to 80 petioles throughout the entire block of the vineyard from about 25 to 50 vines. Since we're sampling during veraison, we're going to be taking the youngest fully mature leaves on those shoots. But if we were sampling during bloom, we would be taking mature leaves from across where the fruit is growing. So this is a difference depending on when in the season you're sampling. And then we're going to be taking a new sample from each distinct block in the vineyard. So if you have one block that's halfway up a hill, that's going to be a distinctly different environment from the part of your vineyard that's growing on a flat hill. So that's just one example of a time when you would be wanting to take two separate samples depending on where you are in your vineyard. So I'm going to start by sampling on this vine. You can see I have my paper collection bag with me, and I'm looking for the youngest fully formed mature leaf on this shoot. If you look at these leaves down here, these leaves are really small, they're not fully formed. So if I go up a little bit on this shoot, it looks like maybe this leaf is the first fully formed leaf. You're looking for something that's a pretty consistent size with a lot of the leaves on the vine. So I'll go ahead and take this one off. And then the part of the leaf that I want to take is actually not the leaf blade. I want to take the petiole for my sample. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that leaf blade away and just put my petiole sample right there in my bag. All right, so now I have one. I've got about 59 more to go. So I'm going to walk around this vineyard and I'm going to take about 59 more petioles, put them in my bag, and then we're going to submit them to the lab. You can take up to 2 leaves per vine, but I wouldn't take more than that. You want to make sure that you're getting petioles from throughout the vineyard. All right, so I've collected my sample. In the bag, it doesn't look like much, but I've collected about 50 petioles. If you have a larger vineyard, please by all means collect more than that. It's just that this vineyard was small and my petioles were large, so I didn't really feel like I needed more than that. But if you have a lot of vines, let's say more than 2 acres, you should really be collecting more like 100. So now all I need to do is close up this bag and submit it to the lab. There's a number of labs around the country that do petiole testing, and we have listed them here. So now we're going to move on to apple foliar testing. When sampling leaves from an apple tree, it's important to take a leaf off of the middle of a non-fruiting branch, about 5 to 7 feet high in the tree if we're talking about a semi-dwarf or a standard sized tree. We don't want to take a leaf off of a fruiting spur or a fruiting part of the branch because the fruit is taking energy out of that leaf and it's going to affect the accuracy of our sample. So I'm going to go ahead and sample this leaf right here. In this case, we're taking not only the blade of the leaf, but also the petiole. So I'll go ahead and just take that one off, put it in my sample collection bag, and now I'm going to take one more leaf off of this tree, and then I'm gonna go through the orchard and collect more leaves off of more trees. You wanna collect from at least 5 different trees in a row in your orchard. We're looking for about 50 to 80 leaves total for that block of your orchard. So you're gonna need to sample from a number of different trees. With apples, it's really important to take your foliar sample mid-season between about mid-July and mid-August. I finished collecting my sample and put it in this paper bag. For this small orchard, I just collected about 50 to 60 leaves, but if you have a larger orchard, please by all means collect more leaves, and that'll give you a higher chance that you're going to be getting a representative sample for your orchard. So now that I've collected it, I'm going to leave it in this paper bag indoors with the top open. I'm not going to put it in a dehydrator or an oven. I'm just going to keep it at room temperature and let those leaves dry out a little bit before I submit them to the lab. There are a number of labs throughout the country where you can send foliar samples for analysis, and we've listed those here. Once you get your foliar test report back, the next step is to interpret that report and figure out what nutrients you need to apply next year. So the best way to do this is to consult your county extension educator, and they will help you interpret the report and make some recommendations. For more information, you can go to extension.umn.edu.